You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
All right, everybody. How you doing? How's your day been? I've had a great day so far. I just wanted to get on here and talk a little bit about Amanda Knox and her account of the murder of Meredith Kircher. And that's the way she refers to it, an account. And she wrote a letter home to her friends and family on November 4th. And I thought we could take a look at it together critically. But before I do, hold on one second. Before I do, please like, share, subscribe to this channel. If you have questions for me, hit me up in the super chat. I have to apologize for something I did yesterday. I did not know what docs were, which are a Norwegian currency. I have traveled, but I have never traveled to Norway. My grandfather was like, have you ever seen Breaking Away? Where the guy's like enthusiast of all things Italian. That was my grandfather with Norway. He really thought it was heaven on earth, and he visited quite often. But I had never been, so please excuse I didn't understand the currency. So thank you very much for that. I wanted to go over before we look at this email, because, no matter how much I go in depth with Amanda's own words, so there's going to be someone in the audience who's going to say, well, that doesn't mean she's a killer. So, of course, this is not why I think Amanda Knox is a killer. It's just interesting to look at the language she uses to describe it and her improbable story. But the main pieces of evidence against Amanda Knox are not only the DNA of herself on the hitch of the knife and Meredith Kircher's on the tip, and that knife being found in Raffaello Solecito's apartment in the drawer, cleaned. It's the mixed blood evidence. So let's look at some of this mixed blood evidence. Not that. So this is Dr. Stefani put this together, and she noticed mixed blood in the drain of the bidet. Mixed blood of Amanda Knox and Meredith Kircher on the cotton bud box and in the sink drain and on the basin. And of course, a large drop of Amanda Knox's blood on the bathroom tap. But what I find most compelling is the mixed blood found of Meredith and Amanda in roommate Philomena's room. So this is not just because they both live there, two DNA that just intermingles. Notice that no other DNA this is DNA that lights up under luminol. And notice no other DNA of the other roommates and Amanda or Meredith and the other roommates like Philomena or Laura were found mixed and lit up under luminol. So luminol is a tool used to detect blood. So what would Amanda Knox be doing? What would her blood be doing mixed with Meredith Kircher's blood in Philomena's room, unless she staged the break-in? And of course, just to review, the court that let her go determined that she was at the scene of the crime, washed Meredith's blood off her hands and feet, that it was a multi-person attack. Not one person did this alone. That's the court that let her go. That's her most positive court decision. Okay, that's some exoneration there. And it also determined that the break-in was staged. So let's look at this email that she wrote home. So here's the header of it. So you can see there's Amanda Knox's email address, amandamknox@gmail. And she sent it to everyone in her address book. So it starts out, this is an email because I'd like to get it all out and not have to repeat myself 100 times. Isn't it awful when you have to repeat yourself 100 times after your roommate's been murdered? Isn't that just the worst? Like I've been having to do at the police station. So Amanda's she already represented herself to her, mother is so helpful, right, with the police, and they just didn't appreciate that help. She's already showing stress of having to tell this story to the police, who are obviously skeptical. Some of you already know some things. Some of you know nothing. What I'm about to say, I can't say to journalists or newspapers, and I require that of anyone receiving this information as well. This is so there's a lot of typos in this. This is my account of how I found my roommate murdered the morning of Friday, November 2nd. Not this is what happened. This is her account. She's accounting. This is her version of the story. Okay. The last time I saw Meredith, 22, English. So this is how she sees Meredith. The most important fact about her is she's English. And that's really the basis of why they thought they could be friends, is they were both English speakers. Of course, Meredith was from the UK. Amanda was from Seattle, America. And then she says beautiful next. So she's trying to fish out the idea that Meredith Kircher and she were friends and she thought highly of her and that they got along. That was not true. Amanda didn't clean. She was very annoying. She wouldn't flush the toilet. She left a makeup case with a sex toy attached to it that Meredith found very distasteful and crude. But most importantly, Meredith was dating one of the 4 boys downstairs, Giacomo. And Amanda really liked Giacomo, but Giacomo wasn't interested in Amanda. He only had eyes for Meredith, and they started dating. And the Halloween, she's about to describe Meredith Kircher coming home from a Halloween party. Amanda Knox was texting her and trying to get together with her and trying to go to this party. And Meredith Kircher wanted nothing to do with her. Totally blew her off. Okay, so here we go. 22, English, beautiful, funny, was when I came home from spending the night at a friend's house. It was the day after Halloween, Thursday. I got home and she was still asleep. But after I'd taken a shower and was fumbling around the kitchen, she emerged from her room with the blood of her costume. So she's introduced blood here in connection with Meredith. Vampire. Okay, so I'm going to go back just in case you missed that. The blood of her costume, vampire, still dripping down her chin. So what's below your chin? Your neck. Where is Meredith Kircher murdered with 2 different knife blades? Her neck. We talked for a while in the kitchen. Excuse me. How the night went, what our plans were for the day, nothing out of the ordinary. So anytime anyone fishes out the idea, like Adnan Syed did, it was just an ordinary day, that's going to mean it was anything but ordinary. If you tell I think Peter Hyatt talks about this, if statement analysis, if you tell little kids, it was an ordinary, regular day, the little kids will come closer, like you're telling a story. So here's the beginning of her storytelling. It was nothing out of the ordinary. So she's telling us it in the negative. She's telling us it was, she wants us to assume that it was usual, regular, nothing unusual happened. Not like she took part in a group murder. Then she went to take a shower, and I began to start eating a little. While I waited for my friend, Raffaele, at whose house I stayed over. See, now he's not her boyfriend, he's her friend, because everybody knows she also has a boyfriend at home named DJ, who she was texting at the police station, to arrive at my house. He came right after, and I started eating, and he made himself some pasta. As we were eating together, Meredith came out of the shower and grabbed some laundry or put some laundry in, one or the other, and returned into her room after saying hi to Raffaele. Okay. After lunch, I began to play the guitar. Oh no, not Amanda playing the guitar again. Because she was known to play the same note over and over again and just drive everyone crazy. With Raffaele, and Meredith came out of her room and went to the door. She said bye and left for the day. It was the last time I saw her alive. And there's a rule in statement analysis. That's usually they're talking when someone says goodbye, when someone's recalling this, that usually means they're marking a time of the murder's marking a time of death. After a little while of playing guitar, me and Raffaele went to his house to watch movies and after to eat dinner, and generally spend the evening and night indoors. We didn't go out, so she's telling us what she didn't do. The next morning, I woke up around 10:30. So how do we know they didn't wake up around 10:30? Well, for one, Raffaele's computer showed music being played really early in the morning, and very lively music. And we know that they were early risers, so this is untrue. And why would she lie about such a trivial thing? So odd, right? And after grabbing my few things, I left Raffaele's apartment and walked the first 5-minute walk back to my house to once again take a shower and grab a change of clothes. I also needed to grab a mop because after dinner, Raffaele had spilled a lot of water on the floor of his kitchen by accident and didn't have a mop to clean it up. So what she's fishing out, the idea, is that they just used a few thin paper towels and left a huge puddle of water on the floor as they had sex, went to sleep, woke up the next morning. She didn't clean it up then. She went to her house to have a shower, as you'll see, and then went back and brought the mop back. That just sounds so improbable and insane to me, to leave a huge pile of water sitting there. But she knows that when the plainclothes policeman came to return Philomena's clothes, she was there holding a mop. Doesn't look good. It kind of looks like you're cleaning the scene, Amanda, right? Okay, so that's her tailoring the evidence to show why she had a mop when the plainclothes policeman came. So I arrived home, and the first abnormal thing I noticed was the door was wide open. Here's the thing, the door to our house. Here's the thing about the door to our house. It's broken in such a way that you have to use the keys to keep it closed. If we don't have the door locked, it is really easy for the wind to blow the door open. And so my roommates and I always have the door locked, unless we are running really quickly to bring the garbage out or to get something from the neighbors who live below us. Another important piece of information for those who don't know: I inhabit a house of 2 stories, of which 3 roommates and I share the second-story apartment. But she hasn't introduced us to any of those roommates. She's introduced Meredith, but not she was supposed to infer who she is. And she never really introduces Philomena or Laura, but She introduces the young men downstairs. There are 4 Italian guys of our age between 22 and 26 who live below us. We are all really, I think that's what she means to me. I think she means to say quite good friends, and we talk often. Here's Giacomo. You can just imagine the hearts flying out of this. Giacomo, my love, Giacomo, my unrequited love, Giacomo, is especially welcome because he plays guitar with me and Laura. I wonder how often that really happened. You think it happened once and he was like, oh my gosh, she's annoying. Get her away from me. She smells. She was known to smell, not wash, not clean. One of my roommates is or was dating Meredith. Okay, let's go through that again. Giacomo is especially welcome because he plays guitar with me and Laura, one of my roommates, Laura, who is one of my roommates, I think that's what she means, and is or was, my revenge, dating Meredith. The other 3 are Marco, Stefano, and Riccardo. Okay. Anyway, so the door was wide open. Strange, yes, but not so strange that I really thought anything about it. I assumed someone in the house was doing exactly what I just said, taking out the trash or talking. She writes talking, but I think she means taking really quickly to the talking really quickly to the neighbors downstairs. So I closed the door behind me, but I didn't lock it, assuming that the person who left the door open would like to come back in. When I entered, I called out if anyone was there, but no one responded. And I assumed that if anybody was there, they were all still asleep. Laura's door was open, which meant she wasn't home, and Philomena's door was closed. My door was open, like always, because I'm an open kind of person. That's what she's saying there. I have nothing to hide. My door was open. But Meredith's door was so the 2 doors that were closed, Philomena's door, the room of the stage break-in, and Meredith's door, the room of the murder. Both of those were closed, which meant to me she was sleeping, even though that didn't mean none of the other roommates got that impression when they found out that the door was closed and locked. Amanda Knox said, oh, yeah. She told the police, Meredith Kircher, that's normal for her to lock her door. But Philomena and Laura were like, no, it's not normal. Knock down that door. That's what they told the police. I undressed in my room. Sorry, I had to cough. And took a quick shower in one of the 2 bathrooms in my house. The one that is right next to Meredith and my bedrooms, situated right next to one another. It was after I stepped out of the shower and onto the mat that I noticed the blood in the bathroom. It was on the mat I was using to dry my feet, and there were drops of blood in the sink. At first, I thought the blood might have come from my ears. Let's read that again for those in the back. At first, I thought the blood might have come from my ears, which I had pierced extensively not too long ago. But then immediately, I know it wasn't mine because the stains on the mat were too big for just droplets from my ear. And when I touched the blood in the sink, it was caked on already. There was also blood smeared on the faucet. Again, however, I thought it was strange because my roommates and I are very clean. Amanda's the only one to say that she was very clean. Everyone else, Meredith's friends, heard her complain about Amanda being a slob, her not flushing the toilet, not taking part in the chores. But Amanda wants to represent herself as a neat freak here. Why? And Meredith, which is true. Meredith was a neat freak. So She assumes that this blood came from Meredith. Why? And we wouldn't leave blood in the bathroom, but I assumed that perhaps Meredith was having menstrual issues and hadn't cleaned up yet. But nothing to worry about. So she has to say she was worried, but not too worried. She was worried with all this blood, but enough to just continue with her shower, being vulnerable and naked. And most women will tell you that is nonsensical. Anyone who's seen Psycho, certainly. I left the bathroom and got dressed in my room. After I got dressed, I went to the other bathroom in my house, the one that Philomena and Laura use, and used their hairdryer to obviously dry my hair. And it was after I was putting back the dryer that I noticed I'll just say crap, she uses another word, that was left in the toilet. Something that definitely no one in our house would do. No one except you, Amanda, with your non-flushing style of going to the bathroom. I started feeling a little uncomfortable, but she didn't flush it then. Why? And according to Philomena and Lauren, the people who watched her, she was like presenting this feces in the toilet like it was a great prize to the police. Why? Because she knew it was Rudy Gudet's, and she wanted to remove all the evidence that implicated her, make it look like this was a lone nut break-in with no connection to the house. She let Rudy Gudet in. She knew him. He played basketball with the boys downstairs. They were known to each other. Rudy Gudet liked Amanda and he liked Meredith, both. Okay. So I started feeling a little uncomfortable, and so I grabbed the mop from our closet and left the house, closing and locking the door so that no one had come back through while I was in the shower. So she's potentially locking this burglar in the house with her. And I returned to Raffaele's place. Okay, you guys, I hope you're not bored. Okay, so after we had used the mop to clean up the kitchen, I told Raffaele about what I had seen in the house over breakfast. So it wasn't important enough to tell him like immediately, like, we don't have time for breakfast. You got to get back to my house. Something's really strange going on. I don't want to go back there alone. I'm scared. So she has to be like, she's walking a fine line. She has to be afraid, but not quite afraid enough, right? The strange blood in the bathroom, the door wide open, the crap left in the toilet. He suggested I call one of my roommates, so I called Philomena. Philomena had been at a party the night before with her boyfriend, Marco. Not the same Marco who lives downstairs, but we'll call him Marco F, as in Philomena, and then call the other, and the other can be Marco N, as in neighbor. She also told me that Laura wasn't at home and hadn't been because she was on business in Rome. See, all the other roommates were out. Philomena and Laura were both out. It was only Meredith and Amanda. So if Meredith is murdered, you have to do your best to say, I wasn't there. It was a lone break-in, which meant the only one who had spent the night at our house last night was Meredith. And she was yet unaccounted for. Is anyone else remembering Asia McClain offering to give Adnan Syed an alibi for some of his unaccounted for time? So Amanda Knox knows that she has time that's unaccounted for too. And Meredith is unaccounted for. So this word unaccounted for kind of is floating around the story. Philomena seems really worried. So I told her I'd call Meredith and then call her back. I called both of Meredith's phones, the English one first, and last, the Italian one. Between the first time I called the English phone, rang, but I think she means it rang, and then sounded as if there was a disturbance, but no one answered. I then called the Italian police, and it just kept ringing, no answer. I called her English phone again, and this time an English voice told me the phone was out of service. Raffaele and I gathered our things and went back to my house. I mean, is this unreal? This like extremely detailed account of this day. I think she's practicing her story because she knows it's starting to fall apart. This night is the night that she's going to, the night of November 4th, I believe, could be wrong, could be the other night, November 5th, but it's very close to the time. I believe it was the evening of November 4th, where she first implicated Patrick Lumumba, her boss. So she's really working hard to memorize her story in as much detail as she can. That's my interpretation of it. I'm sure someone who thinks Amanda Knox is innocent is going to have their own interpretation of it. I unlock the door, and I'm going to tell this really slowly to get everything right. Why does she need to get anything right? She lived through it. She knew what happened. And wouldn't you say, so I don't forget anything? But now she wants to get everything right. So, like I said, this is where I get this idea that she may be practicing her story, her invented story for that night. So just have patience with me. Okay, we will, Amanda. We'll have some patience with you. The living room kitchen was fine, looked perfectly normal. I was checking for signs of our things missing. Should there have been a burglar in our house the night before, Philomena's room was closed, but when I opened the door, her room was a mess, I guess she meant to say, and her window was open and completely broken, but her computer was sitting on her desk like it always was, and this confused me. I used to have a teacher who used to say confusion is when you have an answer you don't want. Convinced that we had been robbed, I went to Laura's room and looked quickly in, but it was spotless, like it hadn't even been touched. So what I think this is about is I think the police had have asked her when Raph called the police, he called twice, the real police, not the plainclothes police who deal with like, phones and stuff like that. Why Raph told the police when he made the sort of 911 call in, why he told the police that nothing was missing. So now she's saying she eyeballed everything and could tell nothing was missing. Like she knew that Philomena had jewelry and that it was still there. Well, I saw the computer there, so I just assumed. That's not a natural assumption when you see a room in the state that it was in. I mean, let's kind of just look really quickly at Philomena's room. So that's the state of Philomena's room. And it was a mess. So you're going to assume looking at that, nothing's missing. And the reason they knew it was a staged break-in, for one, they could tell that the window had been broken with the shutters closed. Two, there was lots of glass on that ledge. There's no way, like, let's just look really quickly at the house. So I made a mistake. And I thought the far left, it really actually makes no difference at all, but the far left was Philomena's room. It's the closer one. So when Amanda says in this email she was looking around, it's the closer one to that bar, not the one with the kind of hood over it. But both of them sit 3.5 meters up. That's 11 and something feet for the Americans. So none of the grass below had been stepped on, and it had been raining the night before, so there was no footprints, and there's no way to hoist yourself up unless you're gonna scale the wall like Spider-Man. There's just no way to get into Philomena's room, certainly not without cutting yourself on all this glass, if you're throwing a rock through the window. And why wouldn't Meredith have heard that rock and had alerted her? But that's even why the Supreme Court says that the break-in was staged. So now I hope I haven't lost my place here, but wait, okay. Oh, Okay, how far into this I think is okay, I'm way back. Okay. Okay, we got through that. Okay, we got through that. Okay, I called the English phone. We went through that. Okay. Okay, here we are. And so I believe I'll start at the top since I'm not sure what I missed. I unlocked the door and I'm going to tell this really slowly to get everything right. So just to have patience with me. The living room, kitchen was fine, looked perfectly normal. I was checking for signs of things missing. Should there have been a burglar in our house the night before and Philomena's room was closed? But when I opened the door, her room was a mess and her window was completely open and broken, but her computer was still sitting on her desk like it always was. And this confused me, convinced me that we had been robbed. I went to Laura's room and looked quickly in, but it was spotless, like it hadn't even been touched. This too, I thought, was odd. I then went into the part of the house that Meredith and I share and checked my room for things missing, which there weren't. She knows there's nothing missing. She did it, right? Then I knocked on Meredith's door. At first, I thought she was asleep, so I knocked gently, but she didn't respond. I knocked louder and louder until I really began banging on her door and shouting her name. No response. Panicking, I ran out into our terrace to see if maybe I could see over the ledge into her room from the window, but I couldn't see in. Bad angle. I then went into the bathroom where I dried my hair and looked really quickly into the toilet. In my panic, I thought I hadn't seen anything there, which to me meant whoever was in my house had been there when I had been there. As it turns out, the police told me later that the toilet was full and that crap had just fallen to the bottom of the toilet, so I didn't see it. So it's not. Wait, so now she's saying that so now she's explaining why she didn't flush the toilet because she just didn't see it. First she saw it, now she doesn't see it. It's the magic crap. Okay, here we go. I ran outside and down to our neighbor's door. The lights were out, but I banged on the door anyway. I wanted to ask them if they'd heard anything the night before, but no one was home. I ran back into the house in the living room. Raffaele told me he wanted to see if he could break down Meredith's door. He tried and cracked the door, but we couldn't open it. It was then that we decided to call the cops. So if you're enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, share this video. Help spread the word about innocence fraud. If you have a question, hit me up in the super chat. There are two different types of cops in Italy: carabinieri, local, dealing with traffic and domestic calls, and the police investigators. He, I think she means Raf, but it's really weird the way she introduces the people closest to her. He first called his sister for advice, and then they called the carabinieri. I then called Philomena, who said she would be on her way home immediately. While we were waiting, two uniformed police investigators came to our house. I showed them what I could. These are the plainclothes policemen. She's not saying they came because of Philomena's phone was found, and told them what I knew and gave them phone numbers and explained a bit in broken Italian. And then Philomena arrived and her boyfriend, Marco F., and two other friends of hers. All together, we checked the house out, talked to the police, and in a big, I don't know what that means. They all opened Meredith's door. And in a big push, did she mean? I don't know. I was in the kitchen, standing aside, having really done my part for the situation. See, once again, Amanda's being helpful. She helped the police out. Now she's done her part. Cleaning the scene, killing her room, taking part in a group murder of her roommate. She's been really helpful. Oh boy. It's so funny, this image management. But when they opened Meredith's door and I heard Philomena scream, a foot in Italian, I immediately tried to get to Meredith's room, but Raffaele grabbed me. It's like something you'd see in like Rebel Without a Cause or like a 50s movie. Like I ran to go help Meredith, but Raffaele grabbed me. No, you're too weak, you're too small, you're too female to handle this. It's really something out of a movie she's describing. Grabbed me and took me out of the house. The police told everyone to get out. And not long afterwards, the Carabinieri arrived, and they soon afterwards, more police investigators. They took all of our information and asked us the same questions over and over. See, again, she's annoyed she has to answer these same questions over and over again. This is why she wants to get her story perfect and straight. At the time, I had only what I was wearing and my badge, which thankfully had my passport in it, and my wallet. Isn't that thoughtful of Amanda Knox to have her passport on her, to be so mindful that she had her passport on her? She may have had the foresight to think that her house could be a crime scene and she would be locked out of it. Wow. Amanda, psychic Amanda, right? Okay, hold on one sec. Let's just take a little break, give my voice a little rest. And I want to, oh, did I miss it? Hold on. I want to thank Rebecca Coolidge. Thank you so much. $4.99 for the super chat sticker. Just, it's like unreal, isn't it? This whole thing. It's really this like a movie. That's all I can say is it's really like she's setting up like a dramatic scene here, Okay. No jacket though, and I was freezing. After sticking around the house for a bit, the police told us to go to the station to give testimony, which I did because I'm really helpful. I'm Amanda Knox. I'm really helpful. I was in a room for 6 hours straight after that without seeing anyone else. Oh, Meredith may be dead, murdered, but she had to sit in a room for 6 hours straight without seeing anyone else, answering questions in Italian for the first hour, and then they brought in an interpreter. And he helped me out with the details that I didn't know. The words for, they asked me, of course, about the morning, the last time I saw her, and because I was the closest to her, questions about her habits and her relationships. So here she why she feels a need to share these personal questions that the police asked her. It's just part of the humiliation of arrivals, my thought on it, but let me know what you think. Afterwards, when they were taking my fingerprints, I met 2 of Meredith's English friends, 2 girls she goes out with, including the last one who saw her alive the night she was murdered. So she's floating out. So if there's anyone sees a woman around the murder scene, she's floating out the idea that it could be one of Meredith's friends here, the last person to see her alive. Okay, back to the email. They also had her prints taken. After that, this was around 9 at night by this time, I was taken into the waiting room where there was various other people who I all knew from various places, who all knew Meredith, her friends from England, my roommates, even the owner of the pub, Patrick Lumumba. She most frequented. Is that Patrick Lumumba or is that someone else? She most frequented. After a while, my neighbors were taken in too, having just arrived home from a week-long vacation in their hometown, which explains why they weren't home when I banged on their door. See, she knew they weren't home. See, they were growing pot plants downstairs. And the reason that Amanda Knox, in my opinion, is so quick to tell her mom and everyone else who cares to listen that she smoked a joint that night is because it's the lesser bad truth. The truth was she was going through tons of money. Her number was found on a cocaine dealer's cell phone. She was spending ton of money on cocaine, in my opinion. And from what we know from, wasn't in the trial, but her money was rapidly dwindling. And I believe that this started as a fight about money. And of course, Meredith Kircher's rent money was never recovered. But strangely, Amanda Knox, who had taken out her rent money 4 days before Meredith's murder, she had 200 euros on her. Right about exactly the amount when she was arrested that she would have had she bought lingerie and a few other things. Okay. Where are we? Okay. So she knows that the boys downstairs are not home. So she's making up a fiction here. So Meredith had the job of watering their pot plants, which explained why they weren't home when I banged on their door. Later that night, I assume she means, another guy showed up and was taken in for questioning. A guy I don't like, but who both Meredith and I knew from different occasions. A Moroccan guy that I can only know by his nickname amongst the other girls, Shaky. So that was one of 7 people that Amanda Knox named. Now, she names Rudy Gude by disguising him. She calls him the man from South Africa. He was from the Gold Coast, but she describes his relationship to this crime perfectly, that he was friends with the boys downstairs and he often played basketball with them. Okay. So then I sat around in his waiting room without having the chance to leave or eat anything besides vending machine food, which gave me a hell of a stomach ache. Oh, poor Amanda. Until 5:30 in the morning. I mean, is this ridiculous, the amount of detail that's in this? Is this really necessary? Is this the biggest example of a liar's email you've ever seen? Liars add all this detail to make it look like they're telling the truth, right? I remember, but she doesn't have, but she'll lose her memory, right? Very quickly, soon after this, she'll lose her memory and she won't suddenly not remember anything that happened that day or the evening before. Okay. So once Raph pulls her alibi, she's forgetting everything until, okay, so she said she got a stomach ache until 5:30 in the morning. During this time, I received calls from a lot of different people, family mostly, of course, and I also talked with the rest, especially to find out what exactly was in Meredith's room when they opened it. Apparently, her body was laying under a sheet with her foot sticking out, and there was a lot of blood. Whoever did this had slit her throat. They had told me to be back in at 11 a.m. So she's tailoring the evidence. She knows she messed up when she turned to Meredith's English friends, and they were saying, I hope Meredith didn't suffer that too much. And Amanda said, what do you effing think? She effing bled to death. So now she's tailoring it, saying, I didn't know what that foot meant. I didn't even know what happened to Meredith. All I knew was a foot. And I'm sticking to it. They told me to be back in at 11 a.m. I went to Raffaelle's place and ate something substantial and passed out. In the morning, Raffaele drove me back to the police station, but had to leave me when they said they wanted to take me back to the house for questioning. Before I go on, I'd like to say that I was strictly told not to speak about this. But I'm speaking with you people, just everyone in my email list, just all my trusted family and friends, everyone who I've ever met, had acquaintance with, or had my email address book, people who are not involved and can't do anything bad. They can't do anything bad. Not like I did by taking part in a murder, except talk to journalists, which I hope you won't do, because my dad's working on getting a PR agent by the name of Gregority Marriott for the tune of $1 million before he hires a lawyer for me. That's really what happened. So it's really funny here how she's saying don't talk to journalists, because that's exactly how they ran this innocence fraud campaign, through journalists. I have to get this off my chest because it's pressing down on me, and it helps. What is pressing down on you? So she's feeling pressure. She's describing pressure, right? She's under pressure because her story makes no sense. And she's being asked to tell it again and again, and probably out of chronological order. And that's very stressful for a liar. They learn their lie in chronicle order. What these police officers and investigators know to do is to take it apart. So they'll go from one order to the next, one scene to the next, and her story was starting to fall apart. So here she's practicing with this email. I have to get it's pressing down on me. And it helps to know that someone besides me knows something. How does that help her? Please let me know in the chat what you think. How does that help her? Comment section. What does that mean? Why would it help her? And that I'm not the only one who knows the most out of everyone. Okay. So what that means is I don't want to be seen as the one who's the most culpable. I don't want to be seen as the one. She's not denying that she's the one who knows the most out of everyone. She just doesn't want to be seen that way. Right? No, I'm not the one who knows the most out of everyone. But hold on. This doesn't make any sense. How would Amanda sharing this with her friends and family still make her not the person that knows the most out of everyone? How would they know more from her email than Amanda knows herself? That doesn't make any sense. But like I said, it's about being seen as the last person to see Meredith alive, seen as culpable. It's in her house. The break-in is very fishy. The police aren't buying it. And she has to look innocent. So this is part of her innocent act. At the house, they asked me very personal questions about Meredith's life and also about the personalities of our neighbors. How well did I know them? Pretty well. We are friends. Was Meredith sexually active? Yeah. So now she's going to humiliate Meredith by broadcasting her personal business. She borrowed a few of my condoms. Like, why is this necessary in this email? Does she like... I'll just leave that up on the screen. I don't even want to read that. This is so disgusting, Amanda, that you would recall this certain kind of sex. What WTF? So she's pretending to be outraged by this, like she's so innocent. Yet she's writing it. She is the editor, the narrator, the author of this. There is no need to put this in here. I do not know. Does she use Vaseline for her lips? What kind of person is Stefano? Nice guy, has a pretty nice girlfriend. Very interesting. So it is very interesting to Amanda, who's trying to figure out where this investigation is going. We'd like to know how you something and tell us if this is out of the normal. We'd like to how you know something, or I don't even know. That is so wackily put, but okay. We're almost at the end here. They took me into the neighbor's house. They had broken the door open to get in, but they had told me to ignore that the room were all open. Giacomo, I just imagine hearts coming out of the screen every time I read their name, Giacomo, and Marco N. room was spotless, which made sense because the guys had thoroughly cleaned the house before they left on vacation. Didn't she just tell us earlier in this email that she didn't know they were on vacation and that she knocked as loud as she could? Now she's like, oh yeah, the room is clean. It makes sense because, they were on, we all knew they were on vacation and Meredith was watering their pot plants. Stefano's room, however, his bed was stripped of linens, which was odd, and the comforter he used was shoved up at the top of his bed with blood on it. I obviously told them that blood was definitely out of normal, and also he usually had his bed made. They took note of it and ushered me out, I think she means to say, but it's spelled USSRED. When I left the house to go back to the police station, they told me to put my jacket over my head and duck down below the window so the reporters wouldn't try to talk to me. At the station, I just had to repeat the answers. See, she just had to repeat the answers that she already memorized. She just had to repeat those answers. That's all she had to do. That's what she's telling herself. I'm going to get through this interrogation. All they have to do is repeat what I already told them. But she has to repeat it, like I said, out of chronological order. Not so tough to do when it's not real experiential memory. I had given at the house. Okay, all I had to do was repeat the answers that I had given at the house so that they could type them up. And after a good 5.5 hours with the police, again, Raffaele picked me up and took me out for some well-deserved pizza. I was starving. So I believe this is when there was a memorial service for Meredith. This could be the time where they went out for pizza. Everyone else went to the memorial service for Meredith. And yet Amanda Knox and Raph went out and got pizza. And then they bought lingerie. But lingerie will be described coming up as just plain underwear. And that's, one of the big PR lies in the story. I then bought some underwear because, as it turns out, I won't be able to leave Italy for a while, as well as enter my house. I only had the clothes I was wearing the day it began. And I can't wash those because what, you expect me to wash the clothes that I wear every day? So I bought some underwear and borrowed. She didn't buy some underwear. She was caught on CCTV footage holding up lingerie with Raph behind her, holding it up saying, I can't wait to try this on and we're going to have great sex later. That's the night after, within 24 hours of Meredith's murder, she was buying that lingerie. And people found that very strange. So that's one reason why Amanda Knox supporters like to talk about the kiss, in my opinion, because they don't really want to talk about the lingerie buying. So they're saying, oh, all these Amanda Knox haters found the kiss so weird. Yeah, some of them may have found it weird, but what we found really strange is she couldn't wait to go and have sex and was buying lingerie that night. That's what we find really weird. If you're enjoying this video, please like, share, subscribe. Leave me a 5-star review for my podcast on Apple. Also, if you have questions for me, hit me up in the super chat. Spoke with my remaining roommates last night, and it was a hurricane of emotions and stress, but we needed it anyway. So why? Okay, she's saying this was a very stressful time, but not a sad time, just a stressful time. What we have been discussing is basically what to do next. Okay, we are trying to keep our heads on straight. First things first, though, my roommates both work for lawyers, and they are going to try to send a request through on Monday to retrieve important documents of ours that are still in the house. Secondly, we are going to talk to the agency that we use to find our house and obviously request to move out. It kind of sucks that we have to pay the next month's rent. Wah, wah. I mean, Meredith's murder, that was nothing, but we have to pay next month's rent and we can't live here. But the owner has protection within the contract. So she's not getting back her rent money. And that's what's priority to Amanda Knox. Okay, this is the end of it. After that, I guess I'll go back to class on Monday, although I'm not sure what I'm going to do about people asking me questions because I really don't want to talk again about what happened. Really? She looks pretty happy to type about it in detail, her fake story. No? She doesn't seem like she's ever turned down an interview. I missed a big chunk of that interview last night. I was so taken aback by her weird flat affect. She was saying that writing her book, that she would have been given $4 million to write her book had Meredith Kircher not been killed. She said that she was It's so bizarre that she was just, telling her story. She made money telling her story, not Meredith's. Give me a break, and that they aren't connected. Like anyone would know who Amanda Knox was if Meredith Kircher wasn't murdered. Give me a break. I've been talking an awful lot lately. Oh, you sure have, Amanda. And I'm pretty tired of it. After that, it's like I'm trying. It's like I'm trying to remember what I was doing before this all happened. Enduring, and you soon will be struggling to remember after giving this incredibly detailed account. Okay, back to the email. I still need to figure out who I need to talk to and what I need to do to continue studying in Perugia, taking one language class that the credits don't transfer back to University of Washington, but okay. Like she's trying to make herself out like she's doing master student work here. Once again, just a review, Meredith Kircher was taking a full, very challenging course load, and Amanda Knox was taking one class with credits that would not transfer back to America. Because it's what I want to do. Wow, you're doing a lot of what you want to do, Amanda. Killing your roommate, writing long emails home, doing splits and cartwheels in the police station. Anyway, back to the email. Anyway, that's the update. Feeling okay. Hope you're all well, Amanda. I feel like I need applause after getting to the end of that. That was a trial. So that is Amanda Knox in her own words. And this is right before. So this is the first kind of Amanda. If you watch the my episode, Amazing Dolls Speak Amanda Knox's Own Words, you can see how her story changed very quickly, and often. But this is the first Amanda Knox version of the story. And this is the one that she'll return to. The kind of, I came home and I just, I was hanging out with Raph all night. We watched Amelie. I came back to and then she's saying she took a shower at Raph's. This is what we know about Amanda. We know that she didn't like to shower. This is according to the other roommate. She smelled, but now she's taking 2 showers in a row. So she's taking one the night of Meredith Kircher's murder. And then the next morning, she's walking home to take another shower and to retrieve a mop because they've left a huge puddle of water from the sink. And we're going to talk about her next statement. Maybe, I don't know, maybe tomorrow. Maybe, I don't know if people still seem interested in the Amanda Knox story because it is very complicated and it does go on. But her story changes, and she talks about the fish they had for dinner that night. Oh, Lucifer, the Doberman, thank you for $2 Canadian. Keep up the good work, sister. Truth wins. You are right. Truth does win. It gets very interesting, her story that she tells. She talks about the blood on Raph's hands but maybe it could just be blood from cooking fish. So she kind of like tosses out these things because she doesn't know what evidences they have against her. And she knows that the police are getting more and more suspicious of her as this goes on. It's amazing that people are still saying that this was some kind of just because they don't understand the Italian justice system. Kat, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Really helps keep the show going and helps me produce content like this. What's interesting about it, she's floating out ideas. And that's when she knows that when it gets too hot, That's when Patrick Lumumba comes out. That's when she fishes out the name Patrick Lumumba, because she's already angry that her shifts have been so reduced. So she's going through money, and the job that she had to support herself at Le Chic, Patrick Lumumba's bar, is slowly, her shifts are dwindling. And Meredith Kercher was going to pick up those shifts. Did she know that? Hard to know. But this email, I really don't want anybody to straw man my argument here. I'm just taking a look at how her story changed. It's obviously not the number one. This email is not the number one reason why I think Amanda Knox is guilty. Obviously, the mixed blood. I mean, you come home. Let's just look at this real quick. Come home and you see blood like this on the bathroom light switch, and you're just going to want to get naked, jump in the shower. It's nonsensical, and the police found it nonsensical too. But here's Amanda practicing her story. And a very detailed story. Why would you write all this detail? And why is it? I think that the most interesting part of this is when she says, I don't want to be the one who knows the most. Well, first, like I said, first of all, even if she even if the person who reading this emails, there's no way they're going to know more than Amanda who lived with Meredith, right? But really what she means is, I don't want to be the one who's most culpable. I was there. Obviously, the scene was cleaned, and the morning after Meredith Kercher's murder, she was waiting outside a bodega. And she would have stuck out in Italy. Her icy blue eyes and that very pale skin would have stuck out among the dark Italians. The store owner claims he saw her waiting for the shop to open, that she went in and she went to the cleaning supplies, but he couldn't tell if she bought anything. But what's interesting is when the police went to Raffaele Sollecito's apartment, it stunk like bleach. And he had told his maid not to use any bleach cleaning the place. Let's just play one clip before I go of Alan Dershowitz. I played this earlier, but it's always good to review. Now, I'm not a big fan of Alan Dershowitz. Obviously, he's the one who worked out Jeffrey Epstein's deal for him, gave him that sweetheart deal. But as a uninvolved legal analyst from the outside, I think he has got a lot of insight into it. And let's watch this together.
Joining us now to talk about what's next in the case is Alan Dershowitz. He's a professor at the Harvard University Law School, author of Taking the Stand. So much confusion here about what this case would mean if it was in America, for example. Let's first of all clarify this issue about double jeopardy. She can't be extradited because under US law, double jeopardy doesn't exist.
Well, there would be no double jeopardy under American law if an intermediate court of appeals reversed the conviction, because that's not a final judgment. That reversal was then reversed by a higher court. So there wouldn't be double jeopardy under American law. There is no double jeopardy under Italian law. There are thousands of American people in jail today on the basis of far less evidence than was presented against Amanda Knox. The evidence against her is very, very considerable. You wouldn't know that by listening to the American media that has been saying repeatedly that there's no evidence against her. She falsely accused somebody of committing the crime. She created a false alibi. She first admitted she was at the scene of the crime. They found forensically that multiple people had to commit the murder. The person who was convicted of the murder said she did it. The evidence is very, very considerable. Now, that may not be enough to persuade everybody or even to go beyond a reasonable doubt. But for people who say there's no evidence, they're just not telling the truth. There's considerable evidence, and she would probably be extradited under the law if she were if the conviction were affirmed. Now, this has become a very political case in the United States. Politicians and the media are all saying that she was innocent and that she's been railroaded by a court system that sounds like an Iranian court system. But that's just not true. And so if the case is decided under the law, she will be extradited. If it's decided by politics, perhaps not.
And a lot of people in Italy do feel as if their legal system is being questioned unfairly as a result of all of this, because, as you say, it's emotional, it's political, and there are other high-profile cases for extradition in the US to get people onto US soil. We're going to have a look at a couple of those and play into the debate, because including that of this man, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. The US wants to prosecute him for publishing hundreds of thousands of classified documents on his site. He's holed up in Ecuador's embassy here in London, avoiding extradition to Sweden for sexual assault allegations. Kim.com is wanted on piracy charges for his now defunct file-sharing site, Mega Upload. He's currently in New Zealand. The US says he cost the entertainment industry $500 million. Film director Roman Polanski has avoided extradition to the US for decades. He fled to Europe in 1978 after pleading guilty to sexual offence. In 2009, the Americans got close to getting him back, arresting him in Switzerland, but the Swiss denied the extradition. So, is there an element of hypocrisy here on behalf of the American authorities, America?
Well, more than hypocrisy. The United States probably seeks to extradite more people than any other country in the world. And if we don't comply with our treaty obligations, we will not be able to insist that Italy and other European countries extradite to the United States. Moreover, who are we to lecture Italy about our criminal justice system? We treat poor people and minority people much worse in the United States by our criminal justice system than they do in Italy. So we really have no standing to tell other countries that their system is unfair. And based on this evidence, in America, if she were not an attractive young woman, if she were an ordinary person charged on the basis of this evidence, she would be convicted and would be serving life imprisonment, or even worse, perhaps the death penalty in the United States.
Okay, that is Alan Dershowitz saying that Amanda Knox would be convicted in the United States, that the Italian, that was before he threw his support behind Trump, very left-wing Alan Dershowitz, disgustingly so in some ways with his age of consent beliefs and all the rest. But he even argued that snuff films should be legal at one point. But he's saying, rightly here, that Amanda would be convicted, and she was convicted on a lot less evidence than a lot of the other cases I talk about on this channel. West Memphis 3, Richard Glossop, Julius Jones, Amanda Knox. There's much more evidence against Amanda Knox than those people. But right, she's white and she's pretty. Oh, an interesting thing happened today. I was just, Devin Tracy made the argument, in all seriousness, he makes fun of us true crime reporters, people like me who go to trials and report on trials and follow and read the transcript to true crime cases. But because why do we waste our time? We're so stupid. The stupid cat ladies, right? Because he just young, rich, what do you say? Young, upper class women don't commit murder. That really was his argument. I mean, it's like shortcut to thinking. And anyone who knows that there are a ton of women who are young and pretty, like Skylar Niece's killers, for example. It's unusual, and that's why it makes news, but there are plenty of them. And one of the people I brought up were the Ken and Barbie killers in Canada, Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. Tammy Homolka, Kristen French, and Leslie Mahaffey's killers. And they just announced 2 weeks ago that Paul Bernardo, this guy to the left, we just went over Jordan Peterson's video talking about what a psychopath Paul Bernardo was. And when he was questioned, that he really gave the investigators hell and said, "Why do you think I'm lying? Sure, I lied and did a few bad things, but that was a long time ago. I mean, what's wrong with you that you don't believe me? I'm being honest. I'm in good faith. Have you given a lie detector to Carla?" Now they've moved Paul Bernardo to a lower security prison. This psychopath. This is the end result of this wrongful conviction movement. Puts in people like pro-killer, pro-criminal Trudeau into Canada. I mean, they're treating this guy is before he killed Leslie Mahaffey, Kristen French, and Tammy Homolka, he was known as the Scarborough RAPIST. This is a very dangerous offender. And they've just put this guy in a low custody prison. That's crazy. I mean, it's like I called it up. I mean, they're getting this guy ready for release, right? It's been too hard on poor Paul Bernardo to be isolated, this psycho killer. And Carla Homolka made a deal. So she was desperately in love with Paul Bernardo. Interesting little fact about Paul Bernardo. He wanted to be a white rapper. If you can find his song online, it is so bad. He's like heartbroken and he starts rapping in this tape to this woman. Let me know in the comments if you've heard it. And if you have questions, hit me up in the super chat with questions. Anyway, so when they got together, very much like Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito, it was on very quickly between the two of them. And Paul Bernardo's fantasy was to have a whole host of virgin slaves that he could abuse and essay. I'm trying to talk about this in a way that is YouTube friendly. And it was very important that they were a virgin. Now, Carla Homolka was not. And that was a big point of disappointment for Paul Bernardo. So she offered up her sister and they Bill Cosby'd her. Right? But then they essay her, right? And they went a little too far with they held a rag over her face. They had burns. She had burns. And a very seasoned investigator came to the house and said, "Oh, this is an accidental death." But he was accompanied by a police officer. It was like his first or second week on the job. And the police officer who had just started being a police officer, but just in the last 2 weeks, he was the one who said, "Oh no, this isn't usual. This is a murder." And they got away with it for years. And the reason Carla Homolka was offered a deal was because she said, "I was an abused woman." She tried to do a Jodi Arias. "I was abused and beaten up." And she had a picture of herself with black eyes. So that really saved her. But after they had made this deal, they found all these tapes. They taped their assault and their attacks on Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. It is so awful. I can't even imagine what those families are going through now with him moved. So that's the end result of this. So it's really just ignorant to say that this never happens, that young women like this never murder. There's so many of them who've done it. Young, pretty women. Now, of course, I've never found Carla Homolka all that attractive, but other people certainly remarked on it. apparently the argument here is that you can tell a book by its cover. And that's the best, most accurate way to tell if someone's a murderer. Just look at them. What race are they? How good looking are they? How much money do they have? How educated are they? And that's another thing about Amanda Knox and her interrogations. If you're going to call her false accusation of Patrick Lumumba, her boss at Le Chic, if you're going to call that a false confession, then she certainly doesn't have any of the risk factors. Low IQ. She herself had to admit on the stand that she was not denied food or water. She was given snacks and tea by the police officers before they, according to Amanda Knox, before they hit and tortured her into calling out her, into accusing her boss of this murder. But even if she did that and she was like a good person, don't you think she would just like immediately go and retract it? But she didn't. I love how, if you were listening to the Intercept statements, the secret recordings that talked about a couple episodes back, you can hear her say, I really didn't want to accuse Patrick, and I sent a letter to my lawyer. So it makes it seem like she was writing her lawyer saying, oh no, Patrick's innocent. Make sure they know that. No, that's not what that letter was about. That letter was all about what she did that day, how she's remembering what happened, how she's going back and trying to remember. Why is she trying to remember? Why does she remember so well? And why does her memory suddenly fade when her alibi is taken away from her? Anyway, coming up, I don't know. Are you guys bored? Maybe we should just watch one more thing together. I'm really kind of itching to return to something, which is the propaganda, which is Amanda Knox's propaganda. And so what Amanda Knox's family did, is they hired Paul Cialino. This is Paul Cialino, who's just coming off. So in 2000, he got a very innocent all-story assignment to falsely confess to Anthony Porter's murder in order to let Anthony Porter out of prison. And that ended the death penalty in Chicago. And Sparky Steve, 2 pounds. If Rudy is out, has he told the truth? I believe now he maintains, I know he plans to write a book if it's not out yet. I will cover that. His interviews, there's one interview that he is out. He said that Amanda and Robb were there, but he's still not telling his truth about the truth about his part in it. He was part of this crime. And I don't understand why saying that he's not a master criminal, but he did take part in this is somehow being a murder apologist. When that criticism is coming for someone holding water for the innocence of Amanda Knox and Raffaello Sollecito. So my understanding is that he says Amanda and Raph were there. And even in that phone call home, he talks about a young, smaller, slighter man with brown hair and high cheekbones there with a knife that night. So who does that sound like? That sounds like Raffaello Sollecito. But, you know, he's still trying to make himself out to be the victim, doing interviews. Rudy Goudet is talking about how he was torn from his mother in the Ivory Coast and how he really tried to help Meredith. And he was in the bathroom with headphones on. No one believes that story. No one. As much as my critics would like you to believe that I believe everything out of Rudy Gudet's mouth. I don't. But the one thing I do believe is I do believe that this started as a fight about money, because it's also supported by the evidence. So let's just look at, so they got Paul Cialino. So if you were an innocent person, wouldn't you look into Paul Cialino's background and think, oh, this guy was involved in one of the biggest scandals of the Innocence Project, right? And then Steve Moore was another one who was an ex-FBI. They're always ex-FBIs who people. They're never like currently in the FBI. They're always ex-FBI. And for what reason, we never know. So if they were fired from the FBI, thrown out of the FBI for immoral behavior, whatever, not following the rules, we'll never know. But they milk that that's an appeal to authority. So I just wanted to look at one more time. This is True Crimes video. I wish you would put up the whole thing because it's so good. But where she goes through and kind of refutes. So this is the first 5 minutes of it where she refutes some of the evidence. But this is how they sold this story to the American public.
Hi, welcome to Crime Time. Today we're going to be talking about the Amanda Knox case and go inside the investigation with former FBI agent Steve Moore, and also Jim Clemente is here. We're going to break it all down. Stay with us. Knox and her former boyfriend, Rafael Solicito.
Solicito is good.
Thank you. We're going to call him Rafael from now on. FBI agent who then moved on to work at Pepperdine in security and to oversee their campuses abroad as well.
You got a chance to look into the investigation in a lot more detail. What did you find?
And that was just before Amanda's guilty verdict in 2009. And by the way, she was in prison for just a month short of 4 years.
Okay.
So by the end of her first trial, she had been in prison over 2. And in late November of 2009, my wife wakes me up at 1 a.m. after seeing a documentary on the case and says, I think there's problems with this. And me being, ex-FBI, my dad was an FBI agent, I thought, when did you stop listening to the prosecutor? I thought, who are you? I don't know you. And so she said, prove me wrong. And so I said, this is going to be easy. The police said that she cleaned the place with bleach. They've got a bleach receipt, they said. They've got the knife with her fingerprints on the handle and the victim's DNA on the blade. And they've got a confession. I said, bam, 5 strikes, you're way out. And she said, prove it. So I went in and I started using contacts and friends. I had worked overseas a lot with the FBI. And I started looking at the evidence. And the first thing I looked at was the knife, because that's kind of open and shut. Her fingerprints on the handle, victim's DNA on the blade. And then I found that the prosecutor's own forensic expert said that every single knife wound that was fatal on the victim with the exception of one, could not have been
made by this knife.
Made by the knife. It couldn't have happened. It was excluded. And then the wound that they said they couldn't exclude it for was a slashing wound, which could be any knife in the world.
Right, and that just means that a sharp-edged instrument drawn across the throat, you can't definitely rule in or rule out anything, any sharp object. It could be a razor blade, it could be a piece of glass, it could be a sharp knife.
So there is
They basically said is every single wound except for the slash was caused by a different knife, and the slash we just can't absolutely tell you that it wasn't.
Let me just take a because she is facing extradition because she has again been found guilty, Amanda.
But I just want to make sure that the viewers know that he started with the knife and went through every one of those other pieces of evidence and also found them to be absolutely ruled out.
Each one of the
So that's Jim Clemente on the right and Steve Moore on the left of him. Interesting fact about Jim Clemente. Jim Clemente was involved in the death of Foster. Now I'm forgetting his first name. Vince Foster. Thank you. Vince Foster is connected to the Clintons. It's the highest up, I believe, ever person to be murdered. His body was found in a nearby park. They said he committed suicide. And there's a witness who saw someone kind of hanging around that park who looked very shady that day. And meaning the inference is that perhaps Vince Foster's body was moved. Who knows? It's not my area of expertise. I don't know. But the more important part is that he claims that he was pressured by Jim Clemente to change his story. And if you listen to Jim Clemente's story, he claims during his time, he also has a brother, Tim Clemente. He has joined the innocence fraud campaigns of the West Memphis Three, Adnan Syed, and now Amanda Knox. Right? So he's using his clout as the ex-FBI as an appeal for authority. So when they bring up, you can see in that video, they bring up the idea, right, that Amanda's been convicted again. And he's like, but no. I want everybody to know that conviction, don't listen to that. Don't listen to the Italian courts. What did the Italian courts know anything? They don't know anything. Don't listen to that. I'm ex-FBI. I mean, he puts himself in every major investigation, Jim Clemente. And he used to be a lawyer in New York, but he lost his law license. And he appealed and appealed. He never got it back. Why? How did he lose that? I mean, I just think I'll never know. I don't think the FBI releases that kind of information, why he left the FBI. He claims it because he was sick and had cancer. Maybe. But he also had to end his career, legal career, because his law license was taken from him. That's how he got into the FBI. And he says he was during 9/11, he was at the World Trade Center investigating, also in Washington, D.C. as well. Like every major area of investigation, every major famous investigation, he's on it. How is that even possible? I'm just highly skeptical of some of his stories. Sorry. He's very good on the Michael Jackson case, but Jerry Sandusky, who Paterno, he was the underling to Paterno at Penn State. When Paterno was getting criticism, the Paterno family paid Jim Clemente to write a report. And he wrote a report just totally giving Paterno the free and clear. He didn't know anything. Sandusky was a nice guy offender who hid in plain sight, that kind of thing. And he released this report. It was put on the Paterno website. Then it came out in the New York Times that Paterno knew about Sandusky and his essay of boys as early as 1976. So Jim Clemente, either he can't investigate his way out of a paper bag, or he's purposely ignoring evidence that makes killers like Amanda Knox and people who essay children like Jerry Sandusky look innocent. Either he's ignoring the damning evidence. I think the latter. And the thing is, right around the time that was filmed, there was so much upset in the comment section of that Crime Time show with Steve Moore and Jim Clemente shilling for Amanda Knox that Jim Clemente was on Twitter all the time taunting people who felt, not me, I wasn't in the conversation then, but I was watching it from afar, taunting people and saying, oh yeah, let's debate, and then pulling out of the debate. Why would you pull out of the debate? I will debate anyone, anytime, on any of the things that I feel passionately about. From the West Memphis 3 to Amanda Knox, to the subject of innocence fraud, to the Central Park 5. I'll debate anyone, anytime. But you have one person who wants to debate in good faith and one person who's running. Who do you think has the better argument? So if you guys have questions, please hit the thumbs up on these videos, share it, subscribe, and I will be answering questions in the super chat. Shoot me a super chat if you have questions. But I find Jim Clemente is someone who I really, really double check if he says anything other than his name being Jim Clemente, that I might believe. Okay. And I wanted to look at one thing about halfway through this lie spotting video. Now, I'm not one who's big on, this is, again, I'm really mining True Crimes' work. But I think it's interesting because I want you to look at what happens when she's asked if she was there that night. Look at her head nodding yes, very affirmatively, while answering no, okay? But we'll watch the whole thing because it's a good way to give me a little bit of a rest, and my voice a rest. And also, I want you to see her language around this crime and really open your ears and put on your common sense, skeptical thinking hat.
Trained lie spotters get to the truth 90% of the time. The rest of us were only 54% accurate. Why is it so easy to learn? Well, they're good liars and they're bad liars. They're no real original liars. We all make the same mistakes. We all use the same techniques. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two patterns of deception, and then we're going to look at the hot spots and see if we can find them ourselves. We're going to start with speech.
I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
Okay, what were the telltale signs? Well, first we heard what's known as a non-contracted denial. Studies show that people who are overdetermined in their denial will resort to formal rather than informal language. We also heard distancing language, that woman. We know that liars will unconsciously distance themselves from their subject using language as their tool.
I did not kill my friend. I did not wield a knife. I had no reason to.
Now, Bill Clinton had said, well, to tell you the truth. or Richard Nixon's favorite, in all candor. He would have been a dead giveaway for any lie spotter that knows that qualifying language, as it's called, qualifying language like that, further discredits the subject.
I look at it as an admission of innocence, to be quite honest, because...
Why do you think that this judge goes further than any other? That not only does he say this is the knife, not only does he say that you had it because of DNA around the bottom of the blade and the hilt, but that he believes you are the one who actually killed Meredith Kercher.
I believe, I can't speculate what this judge's motivations are, personal motivations or otherwise. What I can say is that...
Freud had it right. Freud said, look, there's much more to it than speech. No mortal body language secret. With body language, here's what you got to do. You really got to just throw your assumptions out the door. Let the science temper your knowledge a little bit. Because we think liars fidget all the time. Well, guess what? They're known to freeze their upper bodies when they're lying. Liars won't look in the eyes. Well, guess what? They look you in the eyes a little too much just to compensate for that myth.
Did you kill Meredith Kercher?
No.
Were you there that night?
No.
Do you know anything you have not told police that you have not said in this book? Do you know anything?
No, I don't.
Ask a deceptive person to tell their story. They're going to pepper it with way too much detail in all kinds of irrelevant places.
I was, in the month that we were living together, we were becoming friends. A week before the murder occurred, we went out to a classical music concert together.
And then they're going to tell their story in strict chronological order. And what a trained interrogator does is they come in, and in very subtle ways, over the course of several hours, they will ask that person to tell their story backwards. And then they'll watch them squirm and track which questions produce the highest volume of deceptive tells. Why do they do that? Well, we all do the same thing. We rehearse our words, but we rarely rehearse our gestures. We say yes, we shake our heads no.
No.
Were you there that night?
No.
Do you know?
We tell very convincing stories, we slightly shrug our shoulders. We commit terrible crimes, and we smile at the delight in getting away with it. Now that smile is known in the trade as duping delight.
Actually killed Meredith Kercher.
Here. But there's one I can teach you that's very dangerous and that's easy to learn, and that's the expression of contempt. Now with anger, you've got two people on an even playing field. It's still somewhat of a healthy relationship, but when anger turns to contempt, you've been dismissed. It's associated with moral superiority, and for that reason, it's very, very hard to recover from. Here's what it looks like. It's marked by one lip corner pulled up and in. It's the only asymmetrical expression. And in the presence of contempt, whether or not deception follows, and it doesn't always follow, look the other way, go the other direction, reconsider the deal, say, no, thank you, I'm not coming up for just one more nightcap.
Did you kill Meredith Kercher?
Will not go back there. There are going to be some people who look at that decision and say it's a sign of guilt. She's got something to hide and she doesn't want to stand trial. Going to keep up with this trial? Is there some sort of a closed circuit feed that you'll be able to see each day? You're going to be going to school, so your time is an issue. Are you going
Okay. So I've been asked a lot, well, why was Amanda bleeding? But you can see in this email home that I read that she's already fishing out the idea that this blood that was mixed with Meredith Kercher's blood, and she's touching that blood. Did you guys pick up on that? That she says she's touching the blood because she doesn't really understand how this blood is analyzed. So Dr. Stefani in ways that are really too complicated for me to repeat, could figure out exactly. Some of the blood was deposited from rinsing the knife. Some of it was deposited because it got mixed, meaning Amanda and Meredith were bleeding at the same time. And that's the blood that you're going to find in Philomena's room, the bathroom, and the hallway. So it's really disingenuous to say, well, they were roommates. They lived there. No, this was DNA, not just DNA intermingled. This was DNA that lit up under luminol. And it's really interesting to see her say, in the time that we were becoming better, she's always fishing out this idea that they were friends. She's the only one that says they were friends. And then when she asked whether she was there that night, she swallows really hard too. Did you guys catch that? There's a hard swallow. Then there's a really affirmative nod of the head. And she says no while nodding her head yes. Is that enough to convict her? No. But it's just interesting in concert with the totality of the evidence. We don't have to look at this the way a court looks at it. We can look at everything. But what was presented in court was so strong too. This is just gravy. This is just extras. This really just answers the question why people find Amanda Knox so creepy. It's because they pick up on that. Someone answering no while shaking their head yes. Someone who says that not showing up in Italian court for her appeal to the court was an admission of innocence. I mean, is that it's like the same thing I was talking about with who wants to debate. If you know that there are cracks in your story, if you know that your story is a kind of kaleidoscope, a kind of recreated view of the evidence where you've left a lot out, you're not going to want to debate because all that's going to be exposed. You're going to want to make your own propaganda like the Amanda Knox documentary. But even in that, she does such a poor job of being an advocate for herself. Even in the Amanda Knox documentary, she's fishing out the idea that she's a psychopath. She says, it's like, it's the OJ If I Did It story all over again. Either I'm a psychopath, a wolf in sheep's clothing, or I'm you. And by you, she means she wants you to infer that she didn't kill Meredith Kircher. But that's what I have for today. Tomorrow, I think we're going to look at her first written, I guess it's not even a confession. It's really a written accusation of her boss, Patrick Lumumba, the accusation that ruined his life. She was happy. She's still not paid him the money she owed him. And, not only has she not paid the money she owes him, but she's been getting $10,000 a pop to talk to all these Innocence Project groups. She supported all these other killers like Brendan Dassey and Stephen Avery. She's taken pictures and made appearances with Damien Eccles because that's what Innocence Fraud is all about. These killers go right back into the Innocence Project or a similar like-minded group and advocate for the innocence of all these other killers. And I know you could say, oh, well, maybe she's just blinded because she was innocent herself. But I know that if I were really innocent, I would really be doing my due diligence. She is not an uneducated person. She didn't have any of the other risk factors, low IQ, poor education, denied food and water, treated badly. Even Amanda had to admit on the stand that she was not treated badly. She was not denied food and water before she falsely accused Patrick Lumumba of her crime. So that is, don't let anyone call that false accusation of Patrick Lumumba and then her doubling down on it a false confession, because it's certainly not. I wouldn't want to go right into the Innocence Project and go advocate for murderers. I'd be very careful. But not Amanda. She's happy to do it. And according to her interview with Joe Rogan, these were her people. She found her home. Yeah, other people got away with murder. Anyway, so coming up, what's on the docket? Andrew Hamill, 1:00 Eastern Time. On the 24th of this month, we are going to be talking Adnan Syed and his piece, The Wrongful Exoneration of Adnan Syed. Also, there's a great piece about Natalia Grace Barnett, new podcast in my Patreon. Check it out. It's about the disturbed little person that the Barnett family adopts thinking she's 6. She turns out to be a full-grown adult, or does she? Become a Patreon member to listen to that and more bonus content. Please like, share, subscribe. Please share this video. Help spread the word about innocence fraud. And I'll see you back tomorrow around the same time. Have a great day, everybody.